it's the Halloween season, and not only that, we got a Friday the 13th this month. But since the movie scene seems to be a bit sparse this month, I thought I'd dig into my archives and review some old horror classics. They range from stuff like very early in the genre, Nosferatu, Phantom of the Opera, Metropolis, Hunchback of Notre Dame, to later stuff like Last Man on Earth, Killer Shrews, Giant Gila Monster. Basically, classic horror meets slightly less classic schlock. So, here we go with my 50 Horror Classics movie pack. The first batch starts with Carnival of Souls. Now, this little gem, taking place in the 50s, is about a woman who, before she leaves her hometown to start her life as a professional organist for a church, even though she's not very religious, unfortunately her plans are interrupted when her friend, who's driving a car that she's in, ends up crashing off a bridge because she decided to participate in a drag race. And miraculously, our heroine survives, but there's something off about her. She seems in a constant trance, suffering from auditory and visual hallucinations. One moment she's hallucinating that she can't be seen or heard, and she can't hear anything other than herself, and eventually birds. And also, she sees this pale, corpse-like man following her. In her own reflection, in mirrors, sneaking up behind her, coming up the stairs of her temporary apartment. Even when she tries to date the creepy but slightly charming guy who lives across the hall from her, that strange pale man is always after her. He even costs her job. When she tries to practice at the church, she starts playing this demonic melody and has visions of more pale people coming out of some water and dancing at this abandoned dance hall / carnival that she seems strangely drawn to. It was between the two cities from which she came and to which she went. And even though it's off limits to the public, she seems compelled to go there. But there's really nothing there except a weird, eerie feeling and the occasional odd noise. Eventually, when even this doctor, who she literally bumps into during one of her hallucinations, tries to talk to her, she seems bent on getting to the bottom of her weird condition. And the only answer seems to be at the abandoned carnival. So she goes there, and she witnesses the obvious legions of the dead rise out of the water and start dancing to strange music. And among them, she sees herself, corpseified. That prompts a panic attack, which gets the attention of the dead legions, which chase her through the carnival, led by the pale man. And she runs out onto the beach. See, it's on a beach. And they manage to surround her. And when the authorities, including the priest from the church, the doctor, and a couple other authorities, finally discover her car and her whereabouts, they find nothing but footprints in the sand leading to nowhere. Now eventually, we cut back to the bridge where the car crashed, and eventually it's fished out of the mud, which had been kicked up earlier, and which basically buried the car for a while, and it's revealed she never got out of the car. She was dead the whole time. Our next movie is Atom Age Vampire. Basically, this exotic dancer refuses to stop dancing, even though her on again, off again, on again, off again sailor boyfriend disapproves. And he decides to just break it off with her entirely. This causes her to stress out, and she tries to go for a drive, but ultimately ends up crashing. And she survives, but her car is totaled, and she suffers a severe scarring on her lower left cheek and on her neck, which causes her no amount of undue stress. She's extremely vain, so this damage to her face has really messed her up. She even contemplates offing herself. But then this eccentric doctor who's been experimenting with radiation has concocted a serum that will reverse the effects of scarification. So he's been studying debris from Hiroshima, and he's cracked the secret. He's also discovered a way to rapidly mutate flesh and demutate it with that serum. But it only works under certain conditions. And unfortunately, he and his assistant, a young woman who is smitten with him, but apparently he doesn't seem to get that she likes him. They burned through all of the serum that they had, just trying to partially cure this scarred woman. And it doesn't fully take. And the only way to generate more serum rapidly in time to help her is to steal glands from young women. First, he takes advantage of his assistant. Then other women start disappearing, and apparently there are talks of a gorilla that had been attacking women, because it turns out he's been using one of the serums to mutate himself and make him look different, and to take away some of his inhibitions against killing. Now, this guy, he's totally nutballs. He feels that because he partially cured the woman, that he deserves to possess her. Full-on Oedipus complex. Only she still pines for the sailor, who's been looking for her ever since she sort of dropped off the face of the earth, to go stay at this guy's house for treatment. Luckily, he works with the authorities, and they manage to track her down, but not before the guy starts transforming without the use of radiation or the serum, and he loses his humanity. He starts violently insisting that she belongs to him, and he starts browbeating his poor dumb mute assistant even more, forcing him to be an accomplice. But thankfully, he manages to force his own will to fight back against the now monster-fied doctor, who wasn't exactly all there to begin with. And eventually, he succumbs to the side effects of the serum. Meanwhile, the treatments that the Mad Doctor has been forcing on the scarred woman have worked. And even her boyfriend survives an altercation with the vampire, as he's known as later. And so the Mad Doctor dies. The assistant is taken in for questioning. Hopefully he'll be able to write stuff down. And the now cured scarred woman and her sailor are able to live happily ever after. Or do they? Is a story like this that might garner a sequel. Especially if she becomes the next Atom Age vampire. Next we get a bit of a ripoff of Creature from the Black Lagoon. This one titled Creature from the Haunted Sea. It starts with a revolution on Cuba, and apparently Castro has sent Cuba's treasures away with some soldiers and a motley crew of comical pirates who plan to kill the Cuban soldiers and take the gold. But unbeknownst to them, the creature they seem to have made up whole cloth in order to explain certain killings, both underwater and on the boat. Well, turns out there really is a creature with bulgy eyes, fangs, claws, and it seems to be leaking air. Yeah, unlike the Creature from the Black Lagoon, which looked totally real. The guy they had dressed up as the creature, as the real creature, he used scuba gear, and it leaked through the costume the whole time. Although I guess you could say those were air pockets, and this creature was sort of made up of seaweed, and the air leaking out was from when it surfaced, and it maybe used swim bladders to move through the water. But anyway, they eventually have to sink the boat they're on, which takes the treasure to the bottom of the sea. And so they have to take refuge on an island, and they meet some locals. A sort of mother figure who takes a shine to one of the crew because they can both make very convincing animal noises. The brother of the pirate captain's girlfriend gets a girl of his own, the daughter of the mother figure. And even this American spy who's been tasked with keeping track of the events in the interest of the United States, he gets a girlfriend too. Unfortunately, after the creature and the pirates finish killing most of the Cubans, the creature ends up crossing a line, killing the mother figure's daughter, and eventually killing most of the pirates. The only ones to escape are the United States agent and the local girl who he's taken a shine to after the pirate captain's girlfriend rejects him. So they end up settling on the island while the creature ends up sitting on all that gold. And finally, we come to the best and goriest of all of the movies this current block, Nightmare Castle. It's basically sort of a Telltale Heart meets the Raven. Barbara Steele plays the wife of Lord Aerosmith. I kid you not. His name is Lord Aerosmith. And the wife, as it turns out, hates him, of course. And she's shacked up with the local stable boy. Only Lord Aerosmith finds out and disfigures the stable boy with a riding crop or crowbar or something. Anyway, bashes the guy's face in and messes him up real good. He then keeps the two of them in the guy's dungeon, torturing them with whips and hot pokers and eventually electricity. The guy's experimenting with electroshock therapy, and he fries them both eventually, slicing out their hearts, stabbing a dagger through them, and putting them in a box of preservative liquid, which he hides in the castle somewhere. He then burns the bodies and turns them into fertilizer for a new plant. He also uses his wife's blood to restore youth to an elderly maid who's in on the whole thing. But, as it turns out, the wife is a little too crafty. She left her fortune, including the castle, to her sister, who's been in an asylum the whole time. Turns out she's a twin. The only difference being the twin's a blonde. And the wife is a brunette. That's how you can tell them apart. But he's thought of that. He's going to drive the poor woman insane, but not before she names him executor of her estate. So she's kept alive and locked away while he reaps the benefits. That jerk. See, if I were in a relationship with Barbara Steele when she was in her 20s, I wouldn't take her for granted. They always take Barbara Steele for granted, even when she was older. And playing the Doctor in the Dark Shadows remake. The series, not the movie. Anyway, the sister gets rapidly married after she's taken out of the asylum, seemingly okay, but she starts to hear a strange heartbeat and laughter, and hallucinates the experience of her sister. And eventually, she starts calling out for the stable boy while throttling her new husband. And these weird hallucinations, they weren't even brought on by drugs that the mad doctor had planned to slip her, because the maid, who's now young, made a mistake, gave her a placebo. But eventually, these weird hallucinations, coupled with what seemed like multiple personality disorder, prompt a doctor from the asylum to be called over. Luckily, he's a friend, so she trusts him. And his investigations spook the pair of murderers. So the doc decides to kill him with some electricity delivered through a bathtub. Unfortunately, he screws up and kills his own butler. And no one notices the electrical burn on his hand while preparing a report for the police. Meanwhile, the seeming ghosts of the wife and the stable boy, they prompt the sister to try and find the two hearts stabbed with a dagger. And while the sister fails, the doctor, who seemingly has to leave but quickly comes back, only to find out that the Lord Aerosmith, and who's also a mad doctor, by the way, I forgot to mention that, and the sister wife have left, only they didn't really leave. He's gone full round the twist, and he's decided to do what he did to his first wife by harvesting her blood to make a serum which keeps the, in fact, elderly maid young and healthy, basically turning her into a vampire, more or less. Because the serum from the wife is starting to not work, so she needs a new host. So he begins to drain her blood, the Lord Aerosmith, and transfuse it directly to the maid. You better hope they're the same blood type. Anywho, the ghosts of the wife and the stable boy prompt the doctor who's returned, the good doctor. No, not that good doctor, another good doctor. Sorry, just a bit of a reference to a TV series. Anyway, he finds the hearts, and now that they're revealed, and the dagger has been pulled out of them, they manifest in flesh and blood beings who knock out him, kill the Lord Aerosmith by fire, reveal themselves to be half decayed, like full-on Harvey Two-Face. And seriously, Barbara Steele looking like Harvey Two-Face, that is disturbing. Especially when she gives an insane laughter while she's celebrating her revenge. But then the stable boy goes to kill the sister. Luckily, he's enough of a flesh being to be knocked out temporarily by the good doctor when he comes to, and he rescues the sister. But before they can escape, they're cornered by the two flesh ghosts. Luckily, on instinct, the good doctor realizes that destroying the two hearts destroys the two flesh beings, or flesh ghosts. So he throws them in the fireplace, they vanish, and the two escape the castle as it burns. And I guess they live happily ever after. The sister marrying the good doctor, and hopefully not having to be possessed by her evil sibling. And that's the first disc of the 50 Horror Classics. When we return, hopefully on Sunday, it'll be dragons, ghosts, bodies, and some of Lugosi's early work. It's not Dracula. Stay tuned and have a happy Halloween.